Hey there, frackers. Welcome back to our Battlestar mini-series discussion. I wanted to incorporate some reaction-style footage to accompany the discussion, and in my excitement, the battery on the camera ran out during the discussion. I said there would be some teething issues. We considered re-recording the discussion, but felt it would be a little too scripted, so I have kept this introduction and then moved into showing the clip reel and the reaction footage. Anywho, I apologise for our amateurness again, and I hope you enjoy it anyway.
Proper hangover face that was.
I thought that was face after waking up next to you.
Fucking hell, alright. I thought I was just being funny. I didn't need to get my fucking ankles broken over that.
Hey there, frackers. I knew you were going to do that immediately.
Okay, how many takes is it going to take to say sup motherfuckers?
Sup motherfuckers. One take. I'm Dan, otherwise known as Twisted View, and again with me today we have...
Richard, hello.
And Pete, hi.
Pete is totally in the room, and Rich looks like he's hungover.
I'm slowly getting drunk, yes.
All of 5 minutes before we go into it
slowly drunk and hungry. Not a good mix.
Okay, so we just finished watching part 2 of the miniseries, so we're going to start and go around the table again as we did from the previous one. Overall thoughts and feelings of the second part of the miniseries. Rich?
Yeah, it's did I get a conclusion to part 1? Kind of. Was I left on a cliffhanger? Yes, I guess. We've had some answers for some questions, but we've obviously got new questions now for where they're going to go and how they're going to find quote unquote Earth. So, did I like it? Not as much as the first one. I think part 1 was better. The pacing was better.
Okay.
Part 2 had some nice reveals at the end. Some I wasn't expecting at all. And some development with characters. So it's good as a whole. If I look at it as a whole, it's really good. It's very cohesive, and it definitely sets you up for the TV series.
Cool, excellent. Pete.
If the first part of the show is all about it's got like a small introduction to where they are. You don't see anything kind of like prehistory, and then it's just like bang, instantly you have the attack. You know, it's kind of like the shock. It's just a bombardment. And then if this one is like the slow realization of just how much of a shitstorm they're in. And you've got like the elements of paranoia. You have the not power grabbing, but the power struggle. And then ultimately the decision making of the people in the show. Whether it's Gaius, calling out somebody who at first you think that he's just trying to chuck somebody under the bus. They then turn out to be a Cylon. Ooh, big reveal. And then you then have the other elements, even Adama. You see him make that speech, the grand reveal about Earth, and then the bit at the end.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, so it's
just
all of these lovely
overall,
contrasting pieces that make it so good. But I think overall it makes a great bedrock for what is about to become 4 seasons. Continuous. It's a great starter.
Setup. Good setup.
Yeah.
Excellent. So one of the first things I kind of put down here, which was in part 1, what was our viewpoint of Leodama from the first part in terms of how he came across as a person, and then the second part, in contrast, did your mind change about him?
He's just got better. I mean, I thought in the first episode, he just seems so. Every time he talks, you listen, and he's so methodical. He's just got that. He just sounds like he's got all this experience, and he's just such a great character. And I think the way he delivers it is just brilliant. You really feel the weight of the military on him, like he's seen it and done it. So
right. So just to just to confuse characters, Lee Adama as in Apollo, the younger Adama, not
sorry.
not Commander Adama, but the youngster, the arrogant, entitled
kiddie.
kiddie.
She said, okay, sorry.
Because the only reason I say is because Commander Adama's been pretty much consistent.
Yeah, So,
but I want to know if you have any different feelings to his
with
son.
Apollo, Lee is his name.
Is Lee?
He's gone from he's done not a 180 completely, but he's definitely changed. I think you see him in a different light because he's sort of stepped out of the military for 40 minutes and stepped back into it, and he's sort of seeing everything from the president's point of view, and I think he's got an affection for the people, and he's making better. In my eyes, he's making decisions that make sense, and because of that, I like him a lot more.
Yep.
I like him a lot more. I think he's going to be a very noble and a very astute character going forward. And in this second episode, I kind of left the episode feeling, actually, this guy who started off as maybe over entitled, actually is very humble.
Yeah, cool. Pete.
Yeah, I was my thoughts around Lee at the start are that he's got a chip on his shoulder, mainly towards his dad. He's got military background that that gives him a degree of knowledge and authority. He then goes outside of that, but you also have the scope of the story changing that goes with it. So it kind of explains some of his relaxation, because at one point he thought he was going to die. Before that interaction with him and Starbuck, where she basically saves him in the air being reckless. She's taken it on the chin and was like, I'm not going to be reckless. But then he's gone, well, she was reckless to save me. These people do care about me. I've got to think about the bigger picture. And I think the exposure to Laura, Rosalind, gave him that kind of insight as to the kind of decision making that they're making. And that causes him to drop the chip a little bit. And I think gives them a different grounding, because you can have some kind of hostility going through, and I think you need that friction to make these stories good. But it's just good to see him kind of grow up in the right way, not continue to be like a brat, which is kind of how you feel that he is.
I think for me, one of the things that was they kind of did a bit of a 180 on you, because at the start, in the first part, when he comes on board, he makes the big point at Chief Tyrrell saying, why did I have to do this all manually? Why was this not automatic? And that gave you that sense of you entitled little brat, learn to fly your Viper. So you already had this idea or mentality that maybe it's
over entitlement and everything.
Yeah, his father's the commander, he's the son, so actually he doesn't really have any skills because he got there through nepotism. All of that. So one of the key things for me, especially at the start of the episode, and then what you get going into it, is actually there is more to him than that, and he actually shows a lot of tenacity, just by what he does with the Viper to make it look like a nuke went off to try and keep the Cylons away. As
they say in the military, he's got a lot of minerals.
A lot of minerals.
Yeah, he's an intelligent character.
Yeah.
But the first thing that you see about him is the his reaction against his father and senior military figure. And that's the first thing that you hold on to him, and then it kind of changes.
Well, after
he's just going to be an aggressor towards that, but he's not.
Yeah, after they take him out of that military environment, they put him with the president and sort of civilians. You really see a different side of him. He wants to help. He's got a good mind on him to sort of make good decisions. And I think when he gets roped back into the fold, and as you say, he gets saved by Starbuck, you see him in a completely different light. You see where he's going to add value.
Yeah. One other thing that I thought was really interesting as well, because it's something you made comment to, and juxtaposed to what I'd written down, was obviously President Rosalind then uses Boomer to go out and find all the other ships and bring them back so that they have a fleet of ships. And I literally wrote down, good plan.
Because you already knew what was going to happen.
Well, no, I was literally going, that's a good plan. She's utilising, she goes, right, what have I got in front of me? I now have a secondary ship that has FTL drive capability.
Yeah.
I can start getting together the remnant surf. I just thought it was funny that I was like, oh yeah, that kind of shows again, that logical thought process, how she's thinking about things, what she's doing, and then, ironically, as you pointed out,
leaving them where they were and not drawing attention might have given them longer.
or they could have...
Rather just bringing them, putting them in the same place.
Oh, we got everyone together just to leave them behind.
Yeah, right.
So the irony of what started as, hey, this is a good idea.
Yeah, it started as a good plan, and then ultimately, obviously, you don't, in hindsight, you don't know what's going to happen, but she's, collectively signed them off to their death.
Which is harsh and horrid. But on that note, it goes back to when we saw in part 1, as you said, like the stone cold decision making that you see from Commander Adama, and then in this one, again, the mirroring happening. You see that cold-hearted stone decision making from Rosalind. So even though you look at them and say, well, he's the hard, steadfast military leader, and she's the people for the people president, so she's the heart if he's the mind, if you put it in that mentality. Even though that's the case, and despite understanding the ramifications of the decision that she made it anyway, and she didn't blink when making the decision.
And the big problem is the National Trust now have a serious lawsuit against that botanical garden going down. It's a big one. I mean, it's going to be a real big one.
It's going down.
I think the other thing as
the
well
vegans were upset.
They're very angry.
I think the other thing as well is that Laura making that decision, and you look at the fact that because it's that you say the heart and the mind. I think there's a cool thing with that because yes, she is seen to be very warm. But she made that decision faster than Ty did. Ty froze in that moment. She was instantly on it. But it's also the fact that if you look at, she's the heart and the Adama's the mind, is that he still had the awareness and the a bit of humble to whatever humility. He had the humility to turn around to her, admit that he felt that he was wrong, and that he then he kind of. You almost kind of like 180 to what you thought he was going to be. Yeah. First, you're just a school teacher, and then she had to make that decision, and plus everything else she's been doing, and that he then recognises her. So it's kind of like game recognising game, in that and he knows what to do.
And also, I think in that situation, Lee even said it himself when they were all arguing, like not to break this down into a numbers game.
Yeah,
yeah,
but it's a numbers game.
Yeah,
which was true at the time. Maneuvering on to Gaius, and now the fact that he's seeing 6 in his head.
Well, I mentioned during the episode, I thought they put a chip in his brain, and then they literally outright said it, or she said it. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. Maybe, as you say, he's having a psychotic breakdown. All I know is he's just having a great time. I mean, he's getting pleasured every 5 minutes. But he's a funny character. You think you know where you stand with him, then you don't. You think he's making excuses for using somebody as a scapegoat to cover his own tracks. Turns out he's right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I said this in the first podcast, and I said every time you bring him to scene, he's just going to throw you off. Yeah. You just literally don't know what's going to happen. He changes the situation.
I think you got a nice touch here for what's kind of an ongoing thing with him as well, which is the actor does such a great job of, is his conversations with 6, and then as we saw in there, it's not like that interaction is in his head, only the her part is in his head or whatever's going on, and so everyone else is seeing his physical actions as they are. So she's like getting him off, like somebody's like, "You're okay there, buddy? Like, what's going on? Why are you making that weird face?"
And I think also just from a view standpoint, it's kind of she's the lady in red. She's that strong kind of character type, what do you call it, the femme fatale.
The femme fatale.
Yeah. And it's kind of I like that because it's challenging in 2 different ways, because it gives us things to be thinking about, because you don't know what is going on in his head. Based on what they've done, you don't know if it's real, if it's psychotic.
And I had that that situation.
Yeah, based on his personality type, you've seen him be. He's the rat scurrying away from danger. You've also seen him, relent and to help a lady. And it just so happened that the karma was so quick with Hilo to help him out and get him back on to help him escape. So it gives us so much to be sitting there thinking about, and you're almost like, what if it's this? What if it's that? And then when you look at the whole story, this is what it's all about. It's who are the Cylons, and it brings in that paranoia aspect of the whole story. You're constantly guessing, and that just adds to why it's such a great story overall, because you're just sitting there going, well, and even now, with the introduction of Sharon as the fourth Cylon that we'll
get
seen.
to that. I'm just going to jump back again to Rosalind just a moment, just based on a note that I actually had on here. One of the things I found interesting just before they had to make the difficult decision of what do we do with all these ships and stuff, she obviously went over to the botanical garden, and we saw that scene where she was talking to the ship's captain, and she made a promise to him that they would not leave without them. And I just found it very interesting that she's become the president and therefore a politician, and she's broken her first political promise to somebody. I just thought that was an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I mean,
rightly or wrongly, politicians, obviously, they are renowned for breaking promises. And I think after she got put in that position, it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen. I just think the way the stakes at the moment are obviously quite high, and she had to make a decision. She made the right one. I think you even made the comment that, like, Lee had advised her they've got to go now, and within seconds of going, the rest of the ships were mopped up by the Cylons. Yeah.
And
just as a quick note on that, something that I noted down again, going back to what we were saying about the first one, how good the score is and the music in this episode. Did you actually notice that there was this wonderful where they're counting down and the
tempo built,
out?
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, I wrote down grandfather clock, because I was noticing that in the theme in the background there was almost like this donging.
Right, yeah.
Going on, like the timer ticking down.
Yeah, and I noticed that as well, yeah.
So I just thought from just the score perspective,
it's great. I mean, the whole scene was, you were on the edge of your seat, like you were waiting to see what was going to happen. But I was kind of hoping that the captain she'd promised to would somehow make out, but he didn't.
Yeah.
I at that moment I was like, here we go. She's already starting to get blamed for things.
And also, I think, although we already got this from the first part with various scenes, I think this in of itself, again, where if you think about the context, like 50,000 people left, that's like everything they've got, and already they're having to make decisions that impact not what is now a large percentage of the overall population. Because it's not like before, like 10,000 in billions.
Yeah.
You're feeling like, the consequence of every decision made.
Yeah.
Which I found.
I think, though, in hindsight, though, with her decision, you are. It's very much that I don't feel bad for her having to make that decision, because you've already seen it being made, and you know the level of the kind of decisions that they have to make, and it's like you see it. It's like they get away, and then the slower part of the fleet gets annihilated. You see them all jumping away as it lands, and you're like, well, if she hadn't, they would have died. And it's like that hindsight back. You get to kind of, use that, I guess, now that I think about it. But at the time, I was just like, and it happened. So I don't feel bad for her, but I think I do, in that she had to make a decision. And I think, like, when she reflects on it, like the little girl, for example, like, and just when the aide had, we said it, like when the aide pointed it out just to put the boot in even more.
Well, I just thought you should know. That little girl you met earlier, Cammy. Her ship can't make the jump.
You had to make the most tough decision ever. Let me just prod you a bit.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like... Someone say, put the boot in. It was like she made the decision.
Yeah.
And then he was like, the little girl. And it was just like, oh, man. And then just like when the camera shows the little girl sitting there as everything gets blown up. And it's like, fuck. Okay.
Interesting. Something that just from again, bringing it back to real world politics, etc., is something that Ty says about caring for refugees, which I thought was a very interesting
I was
comment.
like, that's funny nowadays.
Yeah, when you look at it with today's stance. So going back a little bit we're going to talk first about Leobin. So when they got in onto the ship, and then Colonel Odama was Commander Adama was stuck with Leoben trying to get out. Did you think or realise he was a Cylon?
I didn't think he was a Cylon. I thought he was going to get. I thought it was a nice breakaway from the main story for us to learn a bit more about Adama. Maybe find out, why he's captain and sort of, get to see a bit more about his decision making. It was obvious that the guy he was with was some sort of, criminal that was going to screw him over. But I was pleasantly surprised when this criminal turned out to be much more than just a throwaway villain. It turned out to be actually one of the 12, and then gave Captain Adama some insight into what the enemy's doing and how they're operating. So I think that really gave Captain Adama some weight. So when he came back, it advanced the story, and just for me, it was a bit more of an insight into what's to come.
Cool. And Pete, from the perspective of somebody that's like, as a rewatch, obviously you knew that was coming.
Forgot it had actually happened, so it was kind of one of those. But it was because at first I was like, "Oh yeah, he's unhinged." I thought that he had been there for too long, but it was because in my head I was sitting there going, "Why have they left this guy there in charge of all these munitions and nuclear warheads? And there's one guy on this massive revolving space station." So yeah, that was my first thought. So I was like, "Where did they all go?" So it was, had they all just left it and it was going to be left to rot? Because it was no longer needed. So I was thinking about that a lot, and I don't think I got an answer to that. But yeah, when it was that bit where he sat down and he was really pale and he was just sweating like mad, and I was like, oh, he's just going to shank the old man.
Yeah.
And it was Commander Adama,
the old man.
Yeah, the old man.
Got into that habit already.
Damn it. Yeah, sorry.
The old man.
So so it was only when Adama kind of said, "Oh, it's radiating and destroying your
chip."
I was just sitting there going, "Fuck, yeah, okay, of course." But yeah, and then that bit, towards the end, I forgot about that as well. I thought that was revealed later. So even now, because it's been so long, I know the overall lay of the story, but I'm getting pleasantly surprised where my memory has failed. So yeah.
And I think there's like, not to cut you off, but lots and lots of twists and turns in it. So hopefully as well, even though you have seen it and you know generally where it goes, you're going to get the reminders as you go, I didn't know about this, didn't know about that.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of episodes which I was already thinking, which were triggered by the theme music, actually. So I was like, I've got that to come, and then that's about it. So I'm no spoilers here. So.
No spoilers. I thought it was interesting, like from a rewatch perspective, because obviously when I first watched it, it was a reveal at the time, but he actually kind of does, like, he puts down the hints. The hints are there based in his conversation with Adama, because one of the things he says is that he's an observer of the human race.
All right.
And much like Six as well, he then started making some references and mentioned about, well, what if God decided to give a soul to a new race? And Adama's like, it's just wires and machines and stuff. But it's funny that just before we get the reveal of who he is and what he is, he was kind of giving himself away in the conversation.
Testing, Adama, yeah.
Like, if you're listening to it, you're like, actually, hold on a sec, there's that same kind of God-style rhetoric that we got from Six. And then equally, he seemed a little bit too pro the concept and idea of Cylons being more than just machines.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I challenge that with a question then. Do you think that somebody like Adama, who he always said, like with the Battlestar, how it was not networked, he held firm to those beliefs over all those years, and he sat there, and do you think that his stubbornness and his, old boy thinking was being challenged by this Cylon who was trying to lead him somewhere? He ignored it. Do you think that then led him to reconsider his position and his stance towards a school or a teacher being president, and the state of the? I just wonder how much that changed him in his stance, because
I think that little escape, I guess, he had to make with that Cylon, I think, and the whole experience of what played out, I think by the time he got back to the ship, he was probably reconsidering a lot of things, and the big epiphany is that Cylons can now look like humans, he's probably open to anything. So when is it Ros, the president?
President Rosalind.
When she's like, I think we should go to the other side of the solar system or the galaxy, is it? The other side of...
Oh, yeah, well, basically...
Past the red line.
Past the red line. He's
so
probably
out in
like,
unexplored space.
he's like, okay, yeah, maybe that is a possibility. And I think that whole experience, the whole experience with that Cylon definitely changed his, as you say, his old mentality of like, this is what I know, and this is what works to, okay, anything's possible now. And he's a reasonable man, so he's going to look at that evidence and make, hopefully, some good decisions. So yeah, I absolutely think that's right. Yeah.
Something else that, again, because of some of the stuff that they were playing around with in terms of conversation within the episode, there was the scene with Lieutenant Gator where he's with Gaius, and he's talking to him about obviously it was Gaius' stuff that caused the Cylons to be able to attack, even though they don't know that he was more involved. But he did ask them questions like, how do you feel about something that you created becoming twisted? And then I think there's connotations to that, and there's layers to that in terms of the overall concept. So I've kind of bullet pointed down here. Like the fact that we created the Cylons, i.e. the humans did create the Cylons, that was their creation, that then became twisted and became a problem now, coming back. And also the reference to God. Would God be disappointed in his creation of man?
But we talked about this in the
previous one.
Episode.
But I just found it interesting within that conversation. It's almost like that was a conversation that was steering back round to that concept again.
Yeah.
I feel like that conversation is going to continue happening throughout the entire series.
I think you will find that it's going to be continuing throughout the whole series.
I think obviously that's it's a shock to Gaius that yes, he's been called out on it because he's already been thinking about it. But I think the conversation was
the conversation was with Gaius, but I think the conversation overall, the show is talking to the audience in general.
Yeah, no, and I think that notion is going to keep happening. Yeah.
Which brings me on to the next note, which is that Starbuck then decided that she was going to tell Lee about the fact that she was the one that actually passed Zach.
Yeah, I did not see that coming, but I liked it. I liked the fact that it gave maybe a bit more breathing room for Lee and Adonis to maybe patch things up. It wasn't clear cut he was wrong.
Yeah,
and then it also added as I said this in the first episode, that Starbuck was almost like faultless to start with, and it started showing me a bit more like maybe she has made some bad decisions. So
not as faultless as you think she is.
You also see another example of that with where people are making rash decisions because they think it's going to be like the end of humankind. It's like D kissing the aide.
What? You're saying about Blue Eye Samurai, everybody's horny. Yeah.
For example, there's multiple examples where people are making rash decisions.
Billy,
that was it. Yeah, the heat of the moment type thing. So it's I think you kind of the situation kind of almost warranted and kind of allowed that to happen because had it just been a non-threatening situation, I bet she wouldn't have said it. She would have just carried on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good point, actually. That. So, obviously, that's changed a certain dynamic there, and already we're from one episode to the second episode, and you're looking at people differently. Which brings me back over around to Colonel Ty, and when they discovered the Cylon technology, and he's talking to Gator about it. Felt like his response was much more measured and actually self-reflective this time round. Because he said, so you didn't notice this brand new technology for X amount of time on your ship, like your XO should have. Now, I don't know if you picked up yet, but the XO on the ship is Colonel Ty.
Yeah.
So I thought it was quite self-reflective of him to suddenly be like, yeah, I screwed up too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's starting to... I think he's had enough... I would say enough mistakes. I don't want to say that, but I mean, I think he's had a few situations where I think he's being humbled, And at that moment, he was like, I can't really, this is my fault, and I need to stop drinking. And then at the end of the episode, he's considering it. I think, and then, obviously, he's looking to gain a bit more self-respect by going to Starbucks and saying, yep, look, I'm aware of my mistakes.
Yep.
I just sort of accepted this one over here, and now I'm going to accept this one for you. And of course, she's like,
well, as a segue, then
her
let's.
response is just brilliant.
She's
though.
like, no.
I was going to say let's talk about the segue there to that discussion, because like I say, he's had some time to self-reflect.
Yeah.
He's actually gone to her with an olive branch. So how did we feel about the way she reacted to that conversation?
Well, I know Peter here is saying he loved it because it was like total badass, but it was funny, but I also thought it revealed a greater history between them, or at least it made you think, oh, this guy isn't just a bit off when he's drinking, that maybe he's actually a bad egg, and maybe he's fucked up more times than we care to think, like just now.
Yeah.
And yeah, just it made me see him in a. I already thought he was a bit, unpredictable, but not unpredictable. I thought he was basically dropping the ball, but now I'm thinking maybe he's a bit unpredictable. He's on my naughty list.
Yeah, I think it was he was coasting towards his retirement as such. He was comfortable with his addiction. And I think the various events have caused him to have that wake-up call. But I think it's good that you have leaders being held to account. And in this case, you need to maintain friction between characters, because that all of those people living in that space together is going to get nutty. And
do you think?
I just think it's consistent with Starbuck's character as well.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
If she just turned around and was like, "Yeah, fine," you'd be like, "You absolute pussbag," because she is. She's cocky. She's arrogant. She's a button pusher. And the fact that she then called him out when you're drunk, and
she's like in this day and age, she's what you call a high performer or high achiever. She's looking at everyone else and like wanting them to perform at her level, and she's looking at him and thinking, well, I imagine she's thinking, you could do so much better, you could be serving your people so much better, and you just keep dropping the ball, screwing up, and letting things get in the way. And I think that's as you say, that she's holding him accountable.
Yeah, especially now they're not moving into a position of peace; they're moving into the unknown.
Yeah,
and it's going to be, you need to be the best now. And it's like she's got Lee back as kind of like her now superior, and she wants the people in charge, and she knows the Dharma, and it's sort of like, again, because of where they're directed towards, she's almost having a more of a leadership brain by calling him out. Because otherwise you just leave that to run. You're like, you're in charge of me, therefore I'm now going to make you kind of
going to test you,
have some ownership of what you're actually doing.
Accountable.
So the next part that I noted something down about was the discussion between Adama and Rosalind, and you had the social versus the military mindset. And it was also, again, another point that he made a badass line where she's like, the war is over, and his response being, the war hasn't begun. And again, that's a difference between one person's thinking about what's the future of the human race, and the other person's thinking about how do I defend
what we've got left.
How do you survive?
Was that before he went down to get the ammunition, or was that after?
That was after. Back? That was after he got back.
Okay,
because that was then also the the line.
Then we need to get the hell out of here, and we need to start having babies.
That she said to him about, we need to make babies.
Is that direct order?
You better start having babies. An order. They moved before too long.
which actually followed on with is that an order, sir?
I felt like he he came to his senses pretty quickly. Like, she said that, and he was like, "No, this, we need to get into this fight." And then within a few scenes, he was like, "I see what you're saying."
And something that I think, for me, showed that thought process visually. So not by what they were talking about and discussing, but one of the next main scenes was that they decided to get away, and then the Galactica had to stand in front of the other ships, send out the Vipers, and defend them whilst the fleet got away. In of itself, the visual there, what was going on with Vipers, they were getting shot down. They have a finite amount.
Yeah.
So something that I noted here is like, it's a war of attrition.
Yeah.
So even in its battle, every fight they have, basically every time
shrinks
they engage,
their chances,
they are in of themselves making it more apparent that they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Equally, just off the bat and out left field, I thought it was kind of interesting that they made the comment when they were bringing the Raptors back, the Vipers.
Yeah.
Not because they were winning or losing the battle, but because the Cylons were focusing their fire on the landing bays, their ability to get their fighters back to the ship, which I thought was an interesting tactic. Which goes back to the attrition. If they can't get them back, then they're just fodder to be shot at.
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well is that in that same scene as well, which you point out, it also shows you just how horrifically outgunned they are. And that was just 2 Cylon starships.
Yeah.
And
two base stars.
It was just like, hey, here's a Viper, and it's just like, they're swarmed. And it's just like, well, shit. Okay, they are completely... He's sort of like, if you didn't run, you're gone. So it's sort of... I think that was also a thing of him going... We need more than that. We need to keep running because it's annihilation. The human race is gone if we stick around.
Yeah. Which brings me to again, as you mentioned to earlier. So, Dharma's speech at the end, the big speech. What did we think? So, starting with you, Rich. What did you think of that scene of the speech when he talks about the 13th tribe?
He's already established himself as being, a veteran and a leader, and everything he says generally makes sense, and it will make it such a shame where inevitably at some point he's going to be killed off. But at this point, you're following his lead, and you kind of feel safe that he's at the helm. And then he makes that speech. When you're coming to maybe the end of an hour and a half, thinking, where does the human race go from here? And he comes up with, "We're going to Earth," which at the time I was like, "Oh, really? Oh, you're going to Earth?" And then of course it turns out Earth doesn't exist. But it just shows him. It just shows all his qualities as a leader. Like he wants the best for everyone. He's prepared to live with a lie to make that happen. And even when the mood was one of solemn, I guess, and depression, because the whole episode has sort of led to a lot of deaths from people, and whatnot. He was still like trying to find a way for the remaining, I guess, crew and human race to sort of soldier on, and his speech was just great. It was really, really good, and it's what you'd expect from his sort of character. Really, I think you'd find it hard to find anyone else in that sort of military setup that could deliver anything better. I don't think even Starbuck could do.
I don't think she has the gravitas.
That's the word I'm looking for, gravitas. I just don't think she has it. And it was good. It was good to finish at that point.
Okay, Pete.
So say we all.
So say we all, yes.
Yeah, that was really good actually, because it started low and then he made more people kind of get involved.
Sort
of like the volume goes
rally
up,
towards him.
So yeah, I think it's that other thing that you were saying about Laura or Rosalind having to lie.
Yeah,
and he did exactly the same. And I think that was
enough
quite
to just have to not have hope.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he kind of they both see things in different bigger pictures that somewhat overlap. and it's sort of that's him being the stoic leader. You know, I'll take on the hate if I have to. And you see you see it in like not just Battlestar, but you see it in anime. You see it in loads where people are willing to shoulder the burden so that others don't have to. And it's also the other thing as well is it gave the show direction, but it also gave them direction. It's what are we doing? Oh, we're just trying to survive. That can be very aimless. But if they're like we're aiming for, you know, it's a long way away. We don't know. We know where it is. Kind of don't know where it is. However, he's painted that. You know, people now it's sort of like they have a purpose and a direction.
Yep.
Whereas opposed to, you know, what are we doing? We're floating in space. That will just create, you know, depression and everything under the sun that goes with it. So he's given people purpose.
I think if they didn't have purpose, then the show would be over very quickly. Because they would, you know, if you don't have something to live for, therefore something to fight for, you become easy prey.
Yeah, exactly. And I think most people would have felt very overwhelmed and, you know, completely distraught as seeing the size of that Cylon army. And that was just assumedly, you don't know how big it is. That was just a Cylon attack fleet that, you know, they all saw it. No, you can't, you know, lie and hide away from that. So he took one on the chin and just went for it. And, you know, it's sort of at the same time sucking up a fat thing of humble pie with everything else that he's done. There's a lot of emotional maturity with these characters.
One of the things that I just want to sort of finish on with that particular point, obviously after the first part or the first episode, you're saying what a great actor he was. And
he's great. It's brilliant.
Well, just to add some fuel to that fire, did you know that he actually made up most of that entire speech, as in the actor? So according to IMDb, Commander Adama's final speech to his crew, including the repeated use of the phrase, "So say we all," to rally them all to action, was largely improvised.
It's great. It's an absolutely great speech. And again, I just think it takes you from, as you say, being hopeless and not knowing where or if the human race can survive to there might be a fighting chance. The other thing is he's doing that speech, obviously, because he wants everyone's buy-in, but he's also doing that to buy time, because there's a scene you obviously haven't talked about yet, which was with him and the... what's the other guy second in charge?
Sultai.
Yeah, Sultai.
Where they're questioning the doctor and saying, well, how many synthetics are there?
Yes.
And asking all these questions and what's going on. And of course they're saying, well, we've got to keep it under wraps, that the rest of the crew don't know that one of us here could be a synthetic. So there obviously there's a secondary game here to sort of a bit of cat and mouse to find out who is the informant.
Yeah.
Yes, which brings me, funnily enough, segue onto the final part, which is so we found out first of all that there was indeed Cylon on the station they went to, which was Leobin, and then they needed to figure out who else might be a Cylon. And during the episode, it looked like Boltal was fingering the other guy, purely Doral, I think his name was, just to get him away. And as it turns out, he actually was a Cylon. So the question then becomes, did he know that? Did he actually do that? Was that like literally luck or coincidence?
Yeah, why was Six leading him as well? Because she was. Or in his mind, Six was leading him. So it's either and it's. I think we're going to have a lot of conversations around how the relationship between Six and Boltar manifests in that mental way and why it does that. I think there's going to be a lot of the why. But yeah, it's I did like that actually, because I think, and obviously with other introductions of other Cylons, is that you've got like additional elements, because now you know who some of them are, but you also know who one of them is, but not that. So you're kind of sitting there. It's like the Panto. He's behind you, and that bit you're always going to be looking at that character, and it gives Sharon's character agency now. It's sort of like she's going to be so important, and it's sort of like why, but not so much.
Here's a question then for you, not for you because you know what happens, but a question for you, Rich. There was a mention from Six of sleeper agents. Do you think Boomer knows she's a Cylon, or do you think she's a sleeper agent?
Oh yes, you did say that some of them will know and some of them won't. Well, I'm going to assume, based on that line, somebody has to be included in this show that doesn't know they're in a sleeper agent. So I'm guessing she doesn't know. Okay. Yeah, because at the moment you haven't got any more to go on.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go with
which brings me into sort of, I suppose, the last part to that, which is predictions. So this element is one thing that only you can do because we know the answers. Or let me rephrase. I know the answers. You probably remember most of them, if not all of them. So we've got so far 4 Cylons that have been confirmed to us. So we have
6 in red.
6. Lee Urban.
The guy that got thrown off, is that Lee Urban?
No, that's the guy they found on the ship that was on his own, who was already looking really worse for wear.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Then Dorrell.
Yeah, who got thrown off. Yeah.
And then Sharon or Boomer. So that's 4 of our 12 models. So, do you have any predictions for any of the cast of characters and stuff that we've met that you've seen so far? Any predictions of any of the ones that we have seen where you think they could also be?
Well, I made that joke, didn't I? No way! Don't tell me he's a sleeper agent.
So you think the kid?
No, I'm not. I can't. I'm not going to think the kid. It could be. I mean, I think that maybe Billy.
Billy, okay, Billy's on the board as a possibility.
I tell you who does feel like one though. The chick that kissed Billy.
The chick D.
I feel like she could be one. She's pretty robotic and also who's the guy that keeps telling Adamus like where they're going? The plotter.
Oh, Gator.
Gator could be one as well. Gator's. I'm going to take Billy off the list. I'm going to go with
Billy's off.
I'm going to take Gator and the Kisser.
The Kisser D.
D. Yeah,
you've given her a bad name. She's got a rep.
If I had to pick one, it'd be Gator.
Okay, so
Gator feels like data, so that's what I'm going with.
And Data was a robot.
Data was a robot. So that's the logic right there.
Okay, excellent.
Still win a prize if I get it right.
We'll see.
You'll find out in 4 seasons.
4 seasons? I haven't got that long.
Well, no, but you'll either find out along the way, or within the next 4 seasons,
perish.
You're going to find out. Yeah, exactly. This is the fun of it. I mean, if you get any of them right, I'll buy you a beer.
Beer, it's worth.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. A nice pint of neck oil. There you go. That's
I'll have to start
down the pan.
Making a chart and just ticking off who, like a Cluedo style.
Just as something that I noticed, which I thought was quite interesting at the end there, because we talked last time about the relationships and what relationships we saw, and I thought it was kind of funny after Adama was ordering more babies for the crew, that as it panned around the ship and to different elements when the music came up and stuff, you started to see different sort of relationships or potential relationships there. So, for example, Billy and Dee was one of them, the kiss o'clock.
Uh-huh.
And then obviously we have Chief and Boomer at the moment, which is another relationship. But the other one that I found very interesting, because they've been very...
Are you going to say Starbuck and Apollo?
I am going to say Starbuck and Apollo. And the reason I say it is not because of an understanding...
She wants to get with his brother.
Well, I found it interesting that when she was in her bunk, she had the picture of her with his...
And who is she looking at? Right.
Well, Lee had been covered over, and she opened the picture out, bringing him into frame, which I think is a visualization of her now
playing hide and seek, right? Yeah.
or looking at him in a way that she may have not looked at him before.
I mean, you look at what she did for him. She didn't, because she was insanely reckless to do what she did. To the point where even
she parked his shaft in the cockpit, didn't she?
She did what with his shaft in the cockpit?
She parked his shaft in the cockpit. I mean, she landed his plane.
I mean, if that isn't phallic.
I mean,
fair play. I thought I was good at innuendos. You just got a double header.
Straight.
You got a twofer.
Yeah.
But I think the relationship between Starbuck and Apollo is going to be interesting. because the secret's out now and they haven't really spoken about it, have they? So it's sort of like what comes next.
Well, the other thing about that is obviously it's between them. It's come out, which hopefully, as you mentioned, will repair his relationship with his dad. But at what point and when does all this come out?
Yeah, I'd like
beyond
seeing that.
them two.
I did like seeing that, but ultimately, it's going to lead to that guy getting the snip, and he's going to be whacked.
Okay.
Look, they're meant to be making babies, not the other way around.
He's unfortunately Adama's going to get whacked, and then his son is going to be all upset about it, and it's going to be like big thing.
So, just as a separate prediction, then, so as another prediction, we're going to go over Adama, but I want you to predict me. Who do you think's not going to make it?
What, at the end of this season 1, or
I think in the show overall of the cast we know, who do you predict is going to not make it to the end? Possibly.
I think
because Adama is clearly
I think Adama's gone. I think Roz is gone. I mean,
Roz has cancer.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? We haven't actually discussed that. We haven't actually brought that up at all yet. Like about her, the way that affects her decision making, the fact that it's.
Do you know what? That's a good question.
Personality.
I'm going to throw that back at you guys. So, do you think it affects her decision making?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes her very clear-headed. I think she's not bothered about herself. She's bothered about everyone else. So she's very selfless, and I think she's probably prepared to go, that extra mile for everyone else because she's not got anything to live for as such. She's not got, she's. I think for her, she sees the end game. She sees the situation for what it is, and she's not afraid of death. That's probably the key thing. She's not afraid of death.
It's not so much that she's afraid of it. I think
she's learning to live with it.
It's the fact that she knows that her days are numbered. She knows that she's not surrounded by top medical facilities.
Yeah.
She's stuck on a spaceship, and I
She's
think
only got
that gives her
limited
a
time.
certain clarity of thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of she could either be overwhelmed by it, or she could be, for her, whether she's thinking about her legacy or not, she probably is like, well, I can't do this because it will filter down. She knows that if she starts being, as the president, if she starts freaking out, people under her are, and that's the same.
Do you think that maybe it's also part of the reason why she made that comment to Adama about needing to make babies?
Yeah.
Do you think obviously her own mortality has put that to the forefront of her mind rather than the actual battle itself?
That's another layer to it. Definitely, I think it's obviously it's quite clear cut. Yes, we need to make babies. We're losing people, but I think it ties into her character.
Yeah, exactly. It ties into why that thought came from her first rather than anybody else.
Yeah.
But
I mean, back to your original thing about who's going to live and who's going to die. I think at this stage, based on who I've seen, I think Roz is going to go. Obviously, as we said, I think Adama's going to go. I think Lee's going to go, and I also think Chief is going to go.
Interesting.
I think the Weasel will live, and I think Starbuck.
You think Starbucks is going to have a pet weasel?
I think Starbucks.
So you think Gaius
is going to live? I just think it's the only time he's ever going to cop it is on the last episode or the last minute where he might need to just jump on a grenade or something. I don't know.
Well, I think one thing we're definitely going to do moving forward is I'm going to keep a tally basically of
a Game of Thrones death count.
Not just that, but as in who your suspicions are in terms of Cylons and the death counter. Who do you think may or may not make it through?
Well, I think it's Sharon with the pipe in the cockpit. I think that's.
Okay, we've had enough of your innuendo.
As the story progresses, how though I think what you can do is you can say, do your predictions still ring true? Yeah, because there will be storylines which make you go, actually, will they, won't they, will they, won't they?
I'm prepared to flex. It's
okay.
And finally for you, Pete, from a rewatch perspective, now you've rewatched the miniseries.
Yep.
Was there anything in there that you saw this time that you hadn't seen before, or anything in there that you'd forgotten about that you remembered?
Oh yeah, I think definitely there was the. I think even the decision for Laura to make the jump.
Yep.
I forgot about that, and the I think there were a lot. Like I was saying about the Cylon, Leobin. I forgot that he was a Cylon. I thought he was just a nut job. Somebody. Okay, sorry, not nut job. Somebody whose faculties were not all there. And again, I know that there are some clear episodes that I look forward to with particular storylines in them, but there's only a few of them. And I think that as we start making our way through, I'll start remembering more, or I'm just going to be pleasantly surprised. But I'm also going to be looking at it from 15 years of watching TV as having grown up as an adult. What I would have thought was really cool back then, I'll probably look back and go, oh, that's terrible. Or I'll think it's even better. So, yeah, I think there's loads to look forward to with this rewatch.
So finally, before we finish up, just going to give another piece of trivia based on the episode. There's a bit from the two-parter put together because I find it very interesting. So just as the first attack gets underway, Guy says to Six, there has to be a way out of here when he's trying to get out of that. That is actually a lyric or some kind of way out of here from Bob Dylan's song All Along the Watchtower, which, funnily enough, is a piece of music that's sewn into the general overall theme music throughout the series. So that's, to me, I just thought it was interesting that he made reference to it early on. Cool. Well, any other things or any final thoughts?
I just hope the TV show is as good as that.
It is.
That kickoff, yeah.
You are not ready.
You are not ready.
To be honest, I'm not ready.
Well, I'll make myself ready.
I
feel kind of ready.
It's crazy to think that I watched this in 2007, 2008. So yeah, it is crazy to think that it's been that long. I mean, I've watched a little bit here and there when I was trying to, funnily enough, get my old housemate to watch it. But they didn't even make it to. I think they made it through like halfway through season 1 or something. So we've got so much to look forward to. It's going to be hype. So yeah, look forward to the next one.
So say we all.